Welcome to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
Oh, good afternoon, 7 investors, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of 7 Investing Now. My name, of course, is Daniel Brooks Klein. I'm being joined today by Dana Abramovitz and Max Chatsko. Max, it's April, like late April. There's snow in Pittsburgh. What is going on here?
I don't know. We don't have enough climate change, Dan. So I think we need more carbon pollution. After the show, everybody go outside and run their SUV. Just idle it in your driveway.
Yeah, Dana and I will be shooting Aquanet into the air and doing whatever we can, which is probably a bad idea because I live in Florida where we have entered what I consider super summer, the time of year where it is always unbearably hot and it feels like it's about to thunderstorm at any given point. Dana, what are things like in Houston, Texas right now?
It's a little bit chilly, actually. No snow. We had enough of that in February, thank you. It looks to be a lovely day. Good day to go outside for a walk.
So we're going to talk about Netflix earnings at the top. We are going to talk about exercise. We'll tie that into the market, but basically we always talk about biotech companies and drug companies, and maybe taking a brisk walk is actually the best idea for your health. And then Max is going to talk about Bluebird. That is a company I am not familiar with and their goings on in Germany. After that, I have an interview with Greenprint CEO Pete Davis. We talked about sustainability and how most consumers will support sustainable products, but they don't know what they are. And there's a lot of lies out there, a lot of tricks when it comes to it. And of course, we will take your questions and comments. Max Chatsko, do you have Netflix? Are you a Netflix subscriber?
I do. I pay for it. I do not steal people's passwords. So yes.
Dana Abramovitz, are you a Netflix customer?
I am not. And it's mainly because I don't have time to watch TV.
Yeah. So I am. T-Mobile pays for most of my subscription. I am not generally a watcher, but my wife and son like Unsolved Mysteries, not necessarily the show named Unsolved Mysteries, but sort of that true crime genre where you never know sort of if they're going to give you the result or not. So I can't cancel Netflix. I think for most people, you're never going to cancel Netflix. So what happened this quarter? Netflix reported much slower revenue or subscription growth than expected. And the stock was down about 8% last time I looked. But Max, this is actually a misread because the entire pandemic, and we see this with companies, the entire pandemic, they've been putting out exceptional numbers. And as those numbers have been good, they've said, well, we don't know when it's coming, but we're going to have a quarter where we don't grow as fast as we predict because we're pulling forward some of that growth. So Dana, you run a business that I don't know if people pay per class or have subscriptions in your club, but if somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to prepay for my next 50 classes, or I'm going to join for a year instead of a month, that's a good thing, right? Like we're sort of looking at Netflix's success and holding it against them. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's always, good to have, those people that want to enjoy your product, right? So
yeah, and let me read from the company. We believe paid membership slowed due to the big COVID-19 pull forward in 2020 and a lighter content slate in the first half of the year due to COVID-19 production delays. That is what the company said. Again, they've been saying this over and over. So let's look. Do you have that chart, Sam Bailey, that shows their membership growth? If you don't, there it is. So look at the stunning growth in 2020, in 2021. These numbers are exciting. They're big. It is a growing company. But at some point, and you can take the chart down, Sam, at some point, they are not going to add tens of millions of subscribers. They're going to hit maturity. And I think maturity is soon. How are they going to make more money? They're going to make more money by getting their content spend better, by sort of reining things in. We, of course, would like your questions and your comments. We will take them throughout the show. And of course, we might take some at the end. Netflix grew 24% year over year and was in line with its beginning of the quarter forecast. Revenue per share was $3.75. That is above the $2.97 that was expected. Their overall revenue was $7.16 billion. That's slightly better than expected. And they don't believe that Disney Plus or Comcast or CBS All Access or whatever they're calling that now, Paramount Plus, any of these new services hurt their business. So Max, you have Netflix. Do you pay for any other subscription services?
I actually don't. Only Netflix.
So I pay for a whole bunch of them. But I don't think adding Discovery Plus, which we did because of the price point, because we like to watch, say, diners, drive-ins, and dives at all times, or you can always put on House Hunters and watch it. I don't think that hurts Netflix. I think those second-tier companies are going to struggle a little bit with people churning and going in and out. But nobody's getting rid of Netflix. The challenge with Netflix, and the reason I don't like it as much as Disney, is because they have a lot of failures. They put a lot of shows out there that just nobody watches. And I don't care if their algorithm tells you somebody is going to watch it. The big hits are what matter. So we're going to take your questions. We're going to take your comments. There is a big red flag here for me. They've announced a share buyback program. It's only $5 billion. It's very open-ended, but this is a company that's going to spend $17 billion in content this year, that they may be cash flow positive, but they don't really need to be throwing $5 billion around. Max, we've seen this with companies, or Dana, I'll let you weigh in on this one. How do you feel about buyback programs in general? I would just rather a company uses its money well.
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, look, like they're buying back stock at, prices that are at all-time highs, right? I mean, kind of not great timing after a giant run-up in the last, 18 months. So very questionable timing and use of cash, like you pointed out.
I actually think they might have announced it because they fully expected their stock to tank based on the subscriber number. This is a lesson in investing here, that the numbers that the media fixates on aren't the important numbers. So for Netflix, yes, you want to see subscriber growth, but you want to see subscriber growth over years. You're not concerned quarter to quarter. You want to see that content spend go down. You want to see the ratio of hit to failure go up. Every single show on Disney Plus is a hit. Disney essentially needs one show for kids, one show for, let's call it all ages. I'd argue like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision are basically all ages shows. That's all they need. Those are big budget shows, but when you produce a big budget show that you know is going to be massively successful and drive audience, it's much less of a risk than Netflix spending $250 million on a James Bond-like movie that may or may not be successful. And even if people watch it, people may not like it. We've got a couple of comments here. We're going to go in reverse order, Sam. We're going to take the comment from Max Lucas first, a friend of the program. We've had him on. Could you see Netflix start paying a dividend in the next 10 years as they hit maturity, or are production costs too high? I think Netflix wastes too much money to pay a dividend. We've talked about this before. It's great to be a haven for creators, but you still need to rein creators in. And I think you get a lot of super indulgent niche shows. And I don't want to bag on Bridgerton, but I know a lot of people loved Bridgerton, but I think they love it the way like people love like Medea movies. Like it doesn't matter how like incredibly indulgent it is to the creator. No one said, hey, this is a bad idea. This is a little over the top. And that can work sometimes. It worked with both of those examples I just gave. But a lot of times it leads to things like Sense8, which was the family that created The Matrix. It did a show that only lasted one season because it was just incredibly self-indulgent. And that is an awful lot of the Netflix content. And I apologize if you're one of the like 30 people who enjoyed Sense8, or if I'm saying the name wrong. I'm not entirely sure. When you put a number in a wordy title, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be saying it Sense Infinity. I have no idea. We're going to take ZL's comment, and then we are going to move on. Do you think Roku will benefit from increased competition in the streaming field? Yes. I think Roku will benefit from the fact that streaming is becoming something that you absolutely have to have. So even people who are still cable subscribers might find that, oh my God, I need ESPN Plus because I want UFC. I need Peacock because I'm a WWE fan. Those are two very similar examples. I need Discovery Plus because I want to be able to watch, Bobby Flay Takes a Nap, or like whatever show Bobby Flay is producing, or like, Guy Fieri's kids make a bagel, or like whatever ridiculous shows they have on that channel. I think people feel the need for that. Yes, I think Roku is the absolute best player here. I own many Amazon Fire devices. I also own many Roku devices. I find them fairly interchangeable, but the fact that Roku is essentially Switzerland, they don't really have their own content. I mean, they have the Roku channel, but that's just an amalgam of other people's content. That puts them in a really good position, and they are dominating. And I don't think the new Apple device is going to change that, because I did the math. You can buy roughly 6 Roku players for the cost of the low-level Apple device. Max, you have a question here.
Yeah, isn't it ironic? Like, aren't we kind of just recreating what cable was like 20 years ago? Because you need to now subscribe to like multiple different things. It's like channel packages back in the 90s, right?
So this is a you get what you wished for negative. People wanted a la carte pricing. And I don't know if you've ever gone to a restaurant a la carte, but when you go to a restaurant a la carte, you pay more than if you got everything on the plate. So when you go to a steakhouse, and usually there'll be 1 or 2 dishes that come with a side, and maybe there's a special that comes with soup or salad and a side and a dessert. But if you order the steak, your side, your appetizer, that's going to cost you more. And what's happening in cable is some channels will go out of business. As cable has shrunk from about 106 million homes to, I don't remember the exact number, let's say 83 million homes. And some of those have moved to skinny bundles. So that's another 7 or 8 million that aren't getting, say, VH1 Classic or the cooking channel versus the Food Network. As those second tier channels stop getting the 3 cents, 5 cents, 6 cents, whatever it is, per cable home, they have to start cutting programming budgets. And yes, that content is being made up for the fact that we do have the Discovery Pluses of the world, where you're getting literally like 18 shows from Chip and Joanna Gaines. Like, as they're revamping a house, they're shooting a show about revamping the revamping and like how they went to the hardware store and whatever it is. But if you like niche content, budgets for that are largely going away. I will give a little teaser here. If you like niche content, I'm going to be part of a show on the Reels Network. So if you are a fan of 80s pop culture and want to hear me talk about the finances of that, keep your eyes out on the Reels Network, a channel I have no idea where it is, but they are good. Well, I do know where it is. It's in your hotel room. That's the channel in your hotel room where Mario Lopez tells you what movies you can watch in the hotel room. And they show Reels programming aside from that. We're going to take the first comment from Pascal, Sam, and then we will move on to talking about the benefits of exercise. Pascal says, I'm not really concerned in the long term. I'm not, but when a company invests and invests and invests and doesn't make meaningful profit, and there's no reason to believe it won't have to invest, there's always going to be a marketing spend for Netflix that's significant, a content spend for Netflix that's significant. And you tell me, so Max, you have Netflix. Aside from Stranger Things, what is a franchise Netflix owns that they could spin out 15 other shows from? The way Disney could literally build most of a show around a guy who's sort of like Boba Fett. Like, that is literally the Mandalorian. That is not a major Star Wars character, and that has been a massive hit show for. Can Netflix do that?
No, they can't. But like you said earlier, and like Pascal says, I mean, I didn't even know that revenue grew 24% year over year until you said it on the show, because all the headlines are, the subscription growth slows. So I think the media is a little too fixated on that number. But like you said, I mean, eventually the profits do need to come, or maybe accrue from all that scale they have. But if they're going to spend $17 billion a year on content, they need to make sure that that's paying off. And maybe it's not. $17 billion a year in content and no long-term investing show. So Ted Sarandis, Reed Hastings, give us a call. You can reach us at 7investing or info@7investing.com. We would be more than happy to do a 7investing special on Netflix. We're going to move on in a second to talk with Dana Abramovitz about exercise. Before we do that, one of the first things Dana got to do as a 7investing lead advisor is record her video pitch for her very first stock pick. We make these big elaborate slideshows. Max put a template together for that. And then we all get into a very long call over 2 days. It takes like 6 hours where we all pitch our stock. And I have to say, I'd never heard of the company Dana pitched. I'm very interested in owning it. And it's
a company that's been around for a really long time, and that surprised me. My pick for this month, I think, is going to surprise people because it's a company I don't want to say I've been negative on, but it's a company I have given a lot of warnings about on this show. How do you become a member? It is very easy. If you go to 7investing.com/subscribe, you can sign up for $17 a month or $170 a year, and you will get all of our past picks, our new picks that come out May 1st. You'll get a write-up on each pick. You'll also get access to those video calls. You'll get access to our new member call. At the new member call, we walk you through how the service works. You will also get access to our ongoing member call, which happens right after that on the third Friday of every month. You can ask us questions about any of our picks. If you want to know, geesh, what is your strongest conviction right now, aside from your monthly pick? We will share those. I know this can be overwhelming for Dana. It can be overwhelming for new subscribers because I often talk about it. We are charging, a McDonald's price for a Morton Steakhouse dinner. Like this is an investing service for everybody, but you could be a beginner. You could be an expert. There is at least one billionaire who is a member of our service. And there are multiple, dozens, in fact, of people who manage other people's money. So if you want top tier investing ideas, all you have to do is go to 7investing.com/subscribe. I'd say tell them Dan sent you, but that won't actually save you any money. So don't do that. Now we're going to move on to what we're watching. Dana, you surprised me in saying this. And Max and I have talked around this, but we're a country that likes our drugs. Something is wrong, go get a drug, don't worry about it, slap something on. I've tried to make a conscious effort to take less drugs. I was definitely a person that at the slightest twinge of a headache would take some Tylenol. And now I'm definitely more likely to drink a bottle of water because I live in Florida and chances are I am dehydrated, unless it's a show day where I drink about 19 bottles of water while we're doing this. But Dana, does exercise play a bigger role in health than we know? And I promise we'll tie this into investing later on.
Absolutely, it does. From just your physical health, like building that strength, reducing disease, cardiovascular disease, inflammation, to your mental health, just reducing all the stress. It's so important. And, there was this article that came out that was what kind of, I'm big into fitness and I think everybody knows that, or now you all know, so I pay attention to this quite a bit. And there was an article that came out just this past week on looking at the severity of COVID relation to inactivity. And so that, it's something that I had already, the importance of health and exercise on your health was something that I already knew. But the fact that, they had data, they did the study and showed that correlation was really, I think, wonderful.
Now, why is that? Because, you can look at me and I'm not in the best shape in the world, but I do exercise 3 times a week with the trainer and at least 3, usually 4 other days on my own. Is it just because your lungs are in better shape? Is it you're more of a fighter? Why is there less severe cases of COVID if you're a regular exerciser?
So a lot of it has to do with reducing inflammation, putting you at lower risk for those comorbidities or other diseases that have a higher impact on COVID. But really just affecting your immune system. So if you have a healthy immune system, your body fights viruses, all sorts of things that you're exposed to every day. And if your immune system is healthy, then it could fight that properly and prevent disease.
So does this apply to other things? Max has made the, not joke, but the comment that, it's hard to tell someone going through chemotherapy for cancer that they should also be running. But is there, some logic to that where exercise should legitimately be part of a treatment plan?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even if it's, the guidance is 150 minutes a week right? So it doesn't have to be, running a marathon. It doesn't need to be something big. Just taking a brisk walk is all you need to, get your body moving, reduce the bad biochemicals in your body, and just, create health, putting you at risk for other diseases.
I'm going to bring Max Chatsko in here. Max, is this data something that should be like part of the marketing for wearables and for other fitness trackers? Like basically, and I use my Apple Watch for exactly this purpose, but like exercise your way to less chance of death. Like we sort of know the esoteric benefits, like, hey, I'll look better, I'll be strong and all that. But there's a lot going on that we sort of don't see. Is the fitness industry missing this?
Yeah, maybe. And I would like to see that, pick up this decade. I know Dana would as well. I'm actually interested in that as well for genetic testing, right? We're always looking at what genes do you have and what genes are you expressing, which is more important. And then we just, like you said at the top, we have this like drug first mentality. A lot of things can be treated with like better diet, better sleep, exercise. All of those things affect gene expression too. So maybe we don't even need genetic medicines for some of these more prevalent diseases that like the holy grail that some of these companies might be going after in the future. We have a lot of data in terms of like, the more muscle mass you have, the better the better prognosis you have if you have cancer. We already know type 2 diabetes is reversible with diet and exercise. It's kind of a disease of lifestyle and not of genes, and people don't like to hear that. But you go into your doctor's office and you get insulin, and then you're on that chronically. You can treat it though with exercise and diet. So I hope that all of this comes into wearables and maybe some of the AI, whatever, all these future-oriented, platforms that we have, wearables, genetic testing. Exercise should be a healthy and important component of all of those, not just go in, get a pill, pay some insurance company too much money. You are in a lot more control of your health than we talk about.
I'm going to let Max Lucas ask the next question because it was basically what I was going to ask you anyway. So Sam, if you want to bring that up, we would appreciate it. People talk about the Pelotons of the world, but I know that both the gyms I go to are super busy now. Do you think that COVID has made more people aware of fitness, which will help Planet Fitness? Planet Fitness is a sneaky good business. It's never been a pick of mine, but it's always one kind of in the back of my head because Planet Fitness, and I'll throw to you in a second, Dana, does something that's sort of evil and sort of brilliant. When you sign up, you have to sign up with your bank account. Credit cards expire. And when they expire, some people who've never been to the gym just don't go. I was a Planet Fitness member for 4 years and only noticed when we moved that I'd had that membership. I had joined another gym and never turned it off. And there's no recourse for that. Now, of course, I don't love the part of the Planet Fitness business model that essentially doesn't care if you go to the gym. I would prefer a gym that calls me and says, hey, we haven't seen you. Would you like to come in? Could a trainer show you around? I prefer that level of service. But Dana, do you think this type of information, yes, it might be good for Peloton, but do you think it's also going to be good for sort of the recovering gym business? And I'll mention Dana owns a fitness studio.
Yeah, so I certainly hope so. My business has been open since, we were shut down for 2 months last year, but we've been open since the end of May, and working at smaller capacity just to maintain social distancing. But it's been safe, and unfortunately, a lot of the bigger gyms are getting a lot of bad rap in the media. People are talking about how if you go to the gym, you're breathing heavily, the virus is spread through respiration, you're more at risk. I think that you're more at risk, like going, to a house of worship and, a family reunion than you are at the gym. And, maybe, that has that correlation with this study of if you're physically active, your immune system is healthier, so you're able to fight the disease off. I don't know. And I know that, like my studio, many others are, go through, really cleanly protocols, have ventilation systems, are really, working to maintain the safety of all of our clients.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to not group an industry together. Because I've talked about, I've been to Vegas, And in Vegas, I was mostly in Caesars casinos, which were doing things very, very right. Did we walk by some casinos that weren't using absolutely. So Planet Fitness, which again is a publicly traded company that is surprisingly well capitalized coming out of the pandemic, they did have to pause some memberships, but they didn't lose a significant amount of members. Planet Fitness on its website will show you how crowded the gym is. They are using some level of social distancing. The gym I go to, where I meet my trainer once a week at his gym instead of training at my home gym in my complex where I live, they're limiting the amount of trainers and clients. They're not doing classes because that wasn't a particularly big form of revenue because it was something they started right before the pandemic. The gym is open air when it's not raining. There's like garage doors they can open. They have wands that they sanitize everything with. And every trainer and person working out will try to localize their workout. So I might do things somewhat out of order because we'll do 4 or 5 things on, say, the resistance bands. Then we'll clean the resistance bands and go over to the football push and sled or the rope shaky thing. I'm not great with names when it comes to this. And everyone stays very localized. I know when I was in Vegas, my friend and former colleague, Matt Frankel, went to Orange Theory and it was socially distanced. His challenge was Vegas mandates a mask while you're working out, and he found that on the treadmill next to impossible. That it was hot and sweaty, and essentially you're waterboarding yourself. So we actually had to drop out of that part of the exercise. But I think there are house of worship that are doing it. I know my mother's temple is doing it with limited people and some of outside services. I know the yoga studio I used to go to, West Hartford Yoga, is doing a mix of Zoom and in person, and they have a pretty large room, so they could probably get a nice number of people. And Dana, as someone who runs a fitness studio, even just that couple of people there to play off of makes the Zoom so much better.
Yeah, so one of the things that going to the gym has, and I think that this is where the Peloton model has been successful compared to just, a regular stationary bike, is community, right? I teach fitness. I own a studio. I love it. It's really hard for me to do a class by myself. Like, it's really hard, right? It is. It's hard to stay motivated. But when you have, somebody else, you see somebody else doing it, even if it's on Zoom, you feel motivated to work harder to stay in it. And that's just, the social nature. And I think that, that we've been isolated for so long, and now can come back. I think that that's why you're seeing gyms being more crowded. In addition to, people realize that they haven't done it. They've been watching Netflix for a year, and it's time to start moving. And I want to say, that's okay, right? I mean, last year was really crappy, and it's okay that, to do what you need to do. If you're feeling like it's time to get back, don't feel guilty. People aren't going to judge you. If it's ready to go, if you're ready to start moving again, go for it. Just jump in.
Yeah, and what's safe. If you go someplace, and I've seen it, there's an indoor soccer studio, I field, I don't know what you call it, above where my co-work is. And there was no point during the pandemic where they weren't running full games, no masks, people breathing on each other, infecting each other. If you walk into that situation and you see it's a Pilates class that has, 60 people in it and they're sharing machines, well, that might not be the studio for you, but there's absolutely places doing it well. I would argue Planet Fitness is probably one of those places. They're franchise owned, so it's always possible you'll hit one in the that's not following procedures. But in general, there's a lot of focus on chain gyms and even small gyms on social media to do things correctly. So, but even if it is just taking a brisk walk, I every day do a 2-mile loop around my complex. I like seeing the different wildlife. I keep looking for crocodiles or alligators. We haven't seen one of those yet, but there's signs everywhere that they're going to be there. So this is a topic we're going to revisit often. We have 2 healthcare experts here, 1 fitness studio owner, and 1 out of shape but avid fitness guy here. We're going to talk about, Max put it on the sheet as Bluebird Bio throws a hissy fit. I'm not sure if that's the technical term, but before we do that, Sam Bailey, why don't you share your own comment? Because she said something really nice about Dana's pick. I'm so excited to see Dana's first recommendation. It's a company my family loves, but didn't realize was publicly traded. We'll be starting a position when the recommendations are released. Yeah, we inform each other. We're all investing professionals here at 7 Investing. Sam Bailey isn't. She's our marketing director. But we learn things from each other. And I've purchased, I don't know, roughly a dozen stocks because I've heard various members of the team pitch them and get me excited. I'm really excited by Dana's first pick. I've been really excited with everybody's pick, but it gives our team an entirely different perspective. So again, if you want to subscribe, that is 7investing.com/subscribe. And Dana actually has a class. So at some point, it may be after Max's piece. It might be a little bit before. If she disappears, we didn't kick her out. She had to go teach a class. But Max, what is Bluebird Bio and what happened here?
Oh, where do we begin, Dan? So this actually ties in nicely to our previous discussion about exercise and focusing on outcomes rather than, a drug first mentality. So Bluebird Bio is a gene therapy pioneer. And they recently, I'm sorry, Dan, if you mute yourself, I think there's some feedback there. Thank you. Sorry. So Bluebird Bio has some gene therapies for beta thalassemia, which is a rare blood disorder, also developing one for sickle cell disease, kind of related. They got approval in Europe in June 2019, but they ran into all kinds of commercial obstacles and missteps, manufacturing, missteps as well. So the first patient wasn't dosed outside of a clinical trial until this January. So almost, 18 months later. And now they're trying to commercialize it across Europe. So even though there's European Union, every member state, so every country gets to actually negotiate on its own terms, and they tend to be a little more aggressive, or a lot more aggressive actually, than here in the United States, where we don't care. We just let people pay some crazy high price. So Germany actually took a very aggressive stance against Bluebird Bio's first gene therapy, which they're trying to price at $1.8 million. So Germany said, no way, we're not paying that. And rather than negotiate, Bluebird Bio actually just said, fine, we're not actually going to market this in Germany. So call me crazy, Dan, but at $1.8 million, I feel like there's a lot of wiggle room in there.
Well, it depends. What did it cost to develop and what's the market? I think we often fixate on price, but people were outraged when the first iPhone hit $1,000. But the reality is the iPhone is an incredibly well-made device that has a whole bunch of R&D behind it. That is profitable, whereas devices generally aren't profitable. So there is some wiggle room and margin there, but is 1.8 million an outrageous price based on what their cost is? Or is it we spent billions of dollars developing this and the market is 40 people? Am I missing something here?
So that's one of the arguments. And the actual arguments, hey, look, if you need blood transfusions for the rest of your life, that's very expensive. It's probably more expensive than $2 million. So you can justify the price thinking about that, right? If people are cured or don't need, anywhere near that many transfusions for the rest of their life, then that price can make sense. It can save the healthcare system a lot of money. The problem with that is, and this is important to consider for all genetic medicines, right? Genes are distributed based on different, populations. So for the most patients that have beta thalassemia or sickle cell disease actually live in much poorer countries. So if Germany is not willing to pay $1.8 million, I guarantee you Spain, Italy, Portugal, different countries in Africa or even India aren't going to pay that price either. So in my mind, just with all of the missteps that this company's made, this is actually a pretty good example of how not to run a genetic medicines company. And there's a lot of competition coming too. So, the fact that they've delayed their commercial launch by, 2 years almost, that's 2 years less time they have on the market. And there's other approaches. There's, some first generation CRISPR gene editing that's coming that looks in early trials anyway, pretty effective and pretty durable. We also have, some next generation genetic medicines, whether that's CRISPR gene editing or next generation gene therapies coming as well. So that also is going to put pressure on this $1.8 million price tag. And like we just talked about, the point should be helping patients and outcomes. The company's to date kind of pitched itself as, we're always going to have this value-based care system, and walking away from Germany, not even negotiating, it doesn't really fit that narrative, right? So given all the other things that's going on at Bluebird Bio, it's a good example of what not to do, in my opinion.
Max, is this a company that's going to fail? It sounds to me like if you have cheaper competitors below you and you're not handling your marketing or positioning well, that you're not long for this world. Yeah,
so this is actually a good point, right? We in drug development, we act like successful results in phase 3 clinical trials is like the final bookend, and that's not quite accurate, right? It's the final bookend in drug in development, but it's only the beginning of commercial development. So it doesn't matter how successful your drug was in clinical trials or if it's approved. If you can't manufacture it, you can't distribute it, you can't get insurance companies to cover it, you're not going to be successful, right? So as my colleagues here know, and members as well, I look at the technical opportunities and challenges for companies I recommend. I also spend a lot of time in my pitches on the commercial opportunities and challenges, because a lot of times it's hard to understand or learn this lesson, but the best technology doesn't always win in living technology. A lot of times it doesn't lead to profitable businesses. So you really you have to sell a product at the end of the day. So Bluebird Bio so far is not doing a very good job at that.
And that's often true in any technology. Marketing plays a part of it. If you watch Shark Tank, there are often times where you will see something that's an awesome idea, and how the company is bringing it to market is a terrible idea. I will say I have a coffee maker, an espresso machine, that I bought off of a Facebook ad that is dramatically better than any of the 12 others, the 6 Nespressos and 3 Keurigs and whatever that are sitting in various closets of mine. But the company's strategy of buying Facebook ads doesn't seem to be all that successful in making it a household name. We're going to hit the home stretch coming up next. So we're going to say goodbye to Dana, who is not going to be with us when we come out of this. But I sat down with Greenprint CEO Pete Davis to talk about sustainability and how that is going to impact stocks and the market and personal finance and credit cards. So Sam Bailey, if you want to hit that video, we would appreciate it. And welcome back. I am Dan Klein. I am being joined today by Greenprint CEO Pete Davis. We're going to discuss his company's Business of Sustainability Index. Pete, welcome to 7 Investing Now.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you. This is a topic we've talked about a lot. It's one that it's a little bit difficult to put reality to. But Pete, why don't you explain a little bit about what Greenprint does before we get into your research?
Yeah, sure. Greenprint is an environmental technology company. We're a public benefit corporation, and we provide sustainability services in 16 countries. We basically help companies, our clients, develop and meet sustainability goals while increasing brand value and customer loyalty. And so we make it easy for businesses to do well by doing good. We're an Inc. 500 company, and we're on track to offset about 30 million metric tons of carbon by 2025 in a couple of years.
And you did a really interesting survey here. So let's talk some of the highlights of your research. This shows that Americans want eco-friendly products and personal finance options, but they struggle to identify them. You found out that Americans are more willing to purchase sustainable products when they're able to clearly differentiate them. You also found that a majority, that was 56%, would even use a credit card that could calculate and offset the environmental footprint of their purchases. Some of your other key findings were that 64% of Americans are willing to pay more for sustainable products, but 74% don't know how to identify them. Let's go to the first question here. Do you believe that sustainability will play an increased role in purchasing decisions?
Absolutely. So we see it all day long. Greenprint works with clients to develop these sustainability goals, communicate them clearly, and then measure the results. And when we survey our clients, consumers, and stakeholders, we see across the board they're more loyal, they're less price sensitive. We conducted the Business of Sustainability Index to kind of look at American consumers more broadly. And we found kind of across the board, all age ranges and demographics, sustainability is a top concern for consumers among basically every demographic profile driven by younger consumers.
Is this one of those areas, though, where it's easy to say you'll do the right thing, but then, oh, those K-cups are so convenient? Like, is there a bit of a disconnect between action and sort of intent?
Yeah, I think certainly it's human nature for people to do the right thing when it's easy, and it's a little bit more challenging when it's difficult. And so it's our job as sustainability experts to make it convenient. So do the hard work behind the scenes and make it convenient for consumers to choose the sustainable option and not ask them to change behavior too drastically.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. So take recycling as an example. 20 years ago, almost no one recycled. It was really inconvenient, right? You had to wash things out and store them and then put them in your trunk and find a recycling depot and drive to the recycling depot, and almost no one did it. And today, most consumers do, like 90%, depending on the stats you look at, because all you have to do is find the blue bin or take out the bin with your trash, can. We see the same thing. So 3 out of 4 millennials are willing to pay more for sustainable products. Think about the dairy case. You're standing in front of the dairy case, and most consumers today choose to pay $4 for a dozen eggs from free range, humanely treated, free range chickens instead of $2 for regular eggs. So people are willing to pay twice as much for a product and feel better about it when it's sustainable.
Is this something that's being driven by younger consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anecdotally, after interacting with younger consumers, it becomes pretty apparent that they're purpose-driven and focused on sustainability. The facts support the anecdotes. And so 75% of millennials are willing to pay more for sustainable products. And then we see 64% of Gen X and 57% of boomers. And so this is a nice little trend line showing that younger customers are really purpose-driven. And if you want to stay relevant with the customer and even the employee of today and tomorrow, and you're a business looking to attract these consumers and employees, you need to invest in sustainability and clearly communicate your plans, so you build trust with customers.
As a company whose business is sustainability, how do you sort of separate optics and reality? I'll give an example. We've gotten rid of plastic straws pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty sure plastic straws were not nearly the problem that plastic cups are. Or, I know the paper straw is a really poor substitute for the plastic straw. So those optics don't really work for me, because as my straw is melting while I'm having my coffee, I find it really disappointing. And it's a lot easier to carry a mug, which I could wash out in the bathroom, than it is to carry a glass or a metal straw, which is difficult to wash out. How do you sort of balance that with the companies you work with?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the goal is to start and to communicate clearly and acknowledge that, we as companies or as products have a footprint, and we intend to do the right thing. And we want to kind of measure our impact today and put in place plans to transition our business, our product, to the circular economy, and not get over our skis and overpromise, but to clearly communicate, kind of back up what we're doing with third-party validation, so that we can build trust with customers, because that's the most important thing. And so we're not going to get it right the first time, but get in the game. A lot of large companies are already doing this. If you're in the middle market, or small to large company that hasn't started yet, the goal is to start. It's not overly complicated to kind of dive in and start building sustainability plans and goals. Just be transparent, clearly state what your goals are, communicate, and realize you're not going to get it right the first time.
So one of the things your survey found was that people want personal finance products and even credit cards that lean into sustainability. I don't even have any idea what that looks like. I pick a credit card based on rewards and interest rates. I'm not entirely sure I care if my credit card, plants a tree or whatever it is. So what would that look like for consumers?
Yeah, it's a great question and great finding. So we found across the board, like 76% of Americans would switch to an eco-friendly consumer product in the grocery store. 74% would switch fuel. So if a gas station offset carbon emissions on fuel, 3/4 of people would switch to that brand. And we found similarly in the credit card space, I think 71% of millennials said that they would switch and use a carbon neutral credit card. And I think the card space is really interesting because it gets back to the convenience factor that you mentioned, right? So there's a lot going on with plastic straws and paper straws. And so there's confusion in the marketplace. Consumers typically don't trust what companies say. And I think large retailers and even credit card companies are in a unique position. They have a trusted relationship with consumers, and they're kind of at the top of the funnel. And so they can make it convenient. And so when I go to a large retailer, there are thousands of brands that I'm buying. The large retailer is in a position to help me weed through the clutter and figure out which brands are sustainable and make it kind of a consistent, trusted message. And similarly, a card issuer is in a unique position. They own the relationship with me as a trusted consumer. And while I want to be sustainable, 74% of consumers say they don't kind of believe and they don't know how to identify sustainable products. And the card issuer can help me kind of measure and identify transactions that are sustainable, and they can offset the emissions. So I know from one trusted source, all of my transactions are carbon neutral.
Final question here. The companies you work with, how do you build that trust? I agree. I'm pretty skeptical of most companies I deal with, and I cover, industries that will put out reports. We're going to be, carbon neutral by 2035. Well, I'm going to be an Olympic runner by 2035. That to me is basically just kicking the can down the road. How do you counsel companies, to work towards believability?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of goals that are out in the future, and that's because a lot of large companies are trying to, shift the cruise ship, and it takes time. I think we like to have kind of clearly communicated short-term goals as well as long-term goals, and then frequently kind of update and benchmark those goals. So Earth Day is a perfect example, right? It happens once a year. It's a great time. We work with all of our clients to communicate internally and externally on Earth Day and other times in the year to set kind of checkpoints and benchmark their progress against their goals. We act as a third-party validator, but there are others out there. And so it's not just the company and our client stating what they're doing. There's third-party auditors and validators behind the scenes. There's nonprofit organizations we and others can work with to kind of bolster our claims and validate the work that we're doing. And so there's long-term goals, hitting targets by 2030 or 2050, and then there's short-term kind of tactics along the way.
Thank you, Pete Davis, CEO of Greenprint. If our viewers want to get in touch with someone at your company, how do they go about doing that?
They can email us at info@greenprint.echo. They can email me at pete@greenprint.echo or go to our website, greenprint.echo.
Pete, we appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
And we are back live. Max Chatsko, thank you for finishing up the program with me. If there are guests you would like to see us have on, if there are subject matters you'd like us to tackle, hit me up at worstideas7 on Twitter. You can share it publicly. You could private message me. Even if we're not connected, I've set my messages so I can see them all and I can accept them. So always fun to do an interview. We're going to break that one out as an article so people can see it with the video embedded. But Sam Bailey, it is near the end of the program. Let's hit our finisher. Which broken industry do you think is in the most need of disruption? Max, this was a rout. It was health insurance with 70%. And I tend to agree. I had a bad internet and cable experience last night, and Sam, you can take the graphic down. But I do think health insurance is largely flawed in that many people who have health insurance don't feel all that confident that it's going to cover them when something goes wrong. Max, I'll give you the first and last word here.
Yeah, insurance like that, like health insurance, dental insurance is probably even worse. It almost feels like a scam, right? You pay and it covers like nothing. And you're like, well, why do I pay?
Not feels like a scam. Dental insurance is a scam. When you're paying into something that's basically like a discount card, dental insurance is slightly more effective than when I get my 6th frozen yogurt, the 7th one is free. It is not insurance. It's a discount plan. But sorry to step on you there, Max.
No, yeah. I mean, I would agree. I don't know what the disruption would look like. I mean, it's hard to imagine that comes from private industry. That's kind of how we got in this mess. Not to get political or anything, but like you do kind of need scale for health insurance. So, but hopefully, this decade, some of that changes. I don't know.
I think we're seeing it being led by big tech. Telemedicine has made some of the more expensive parts of healthcare. I mean, you can't have, your appendix taken out over a teledoc appointment. But you can replace a doctor's visit, and that increases efficiency on multiple levels. First of all, from a record-keeping point of view, all your information is typed in because you had to say what was wrong in order to get there. And then a doctor might be able to see 12 patients in an hour instead of, say, 5 or 6 because they're not physically moving, because they have all the information at hand. So there are absolutely ways where we can get more efficient. There's putting more doctors into the chain of deciding on healthcare and taking bureaucrats out can get things more efficient. How many people are dealing with some life-threatening disease, and their health insurance company denies them the medicine that their doctor tells them to take, and then they have to fight it for months. So I think you're going to see some disruption here. This is something we are going to talk about on future episodes, but we are out of time today. If you'd like to get in touch with us, that is very easy to do. It's info@7investing.com. That's for questions about our service, questions as a member, questions about you'd like to be a member. Don't ask us to research specific companies. We're happy to talk about companies on social media if we follow them or on this show, but we tend to not do it one-to-one because it's not a great use of our time. And of course, you can reach us as a team on Twitter @7investing. That is the number 7 investing. This has been fun. For Dana Abramovitz, for Max Chatsko, for Sam Bailey behind the glass, for the rest of the 7 Investing team who are, of course, watching at home. I am Dan Klein. I will see you Friday.